Is Oklahoma winning or losing the war on drugs? Our central location makes us a narcotics crossroads for meth and fentanyl being produced in Mexico and shipped here and all points in between. With more on what's being done to stop it and what help is available for Oklahoma addicts, here's moderator Susan Godot with this week's in-depth discussion featuring a panel of expert guests.
Thank you, Rich. We have a panel of experts who can really give us an all-around picture of how the drug problems that face America are also impacting Oklahoma. I'd like to introduce them to you now. First, we have Mark Woodward, who is a PIO and Education Officer with the Oklahoma Bureau of Narcotics. We have Chad Moody, known as the drug lawyer in Oklahoma City. And we have Lauren Ferris, who is a licensed certified social worker and program director at a residential treatment facility called North Care. Thank you all for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mark, we're going to start with you. One of the reasons we wanted to look into this is a recent bust made by OBN, the Bureau of Narcotics, involving meth. First of all, can you tell us a little bit about that bust?
Yeah, it started back in July when we were investigating a group that was bringing large quantities of meth into Oklahoma. And ultimately, we ran some search warrants at a couple of locations and ended up with 589 pounds of meth. That's 270 kilos of methamphetamine. It's the largest in our agency's history and state history as far as a single meth seizure.
And where was this meth coming from?
Well, it's almost exclusively sourced out of Mexico by the Mexican drug trafficking organizations. We hardly see meth labs anymore here in Oklahoma. About 98 to 99% of the meth consumed in the United States is sourced by drug trafficking organizations out of Mexico.
So, Chad, I'm going to come to you next. You know, the drug lawyer, what happens after a seizure like this? Do you see a lot of the fallout, the immediate fallout or impact from these kinds of arrests?
Not as much as I used to. There was a whole lot of highway drug interdiction prior to marijuana becoming legal. It seems like that has tapered off some. With regard to methamphetamine, I'm not seeing near the number of cases that I once did. Meth, heroin, cocaine, possession cases used to make up about half of my caseload, but all of those have become misdemeanors now. And so people oftentimes choose not to hire a lawyer.
I thought that was just for marijuana.
Lots of people thought that, but no, Oklahoma is arguably the safest place to be an addict these days, because so long as you have only a possessory amount, then you're never going to really look at prison time.
Mark, you're nodding your head.
It's frustrating. We hear so many people who in the past, they may have gotten arrested on a drug charge, gotten a felony, and got diverted to our drug court system, and drug courts got them off of drugs, and they say they're alive today because of our drug court system and directing them into treatment. And those simply aren't options for so many offenders today because they are misdemeanors, and it's easy for them to just take the misdemeanor charge. And so we're sending them back out on the streets with a full-blown active addiction.
All right. When I talk about the well-rounded look at the impact on Oklahoma, this is where I want to come to you, Lauren, and talk about, Chad just said Oklahoma is the safest place to be a drug addict. Are you seeing an increase in people coming for rehab with North Care?
I think that it's pretty safe to say that we're always going to have some job security in terms of rehabilitation. Unfortunately, Oklahoma is one of the worst states for opiate addiction and meth addiction. The majority of the women and folks that we see come in do come in with methamphetamine or opioid addictions into treatment.
Chad, for many years, and I can remember, I'm old enough to remember the war on drugs when that took effect. You said that business has slowed down for you because of recent laws that turn simple drug possession into misdemeanors in Oklahoma. Have you seen an increase in any other type of drug-related needs for defense?
Well, certainly we're seeing a lot more fentanyl. I don't seem to get a great many of those cases, but we hear reports on the radio all the time that we've got a bit of a scourge of fentanyl going on.
All right, Mark, what about the fentanyl? Because that's what we're hearing a lot. It's the drug du jour. It's what we're hearing a lot about on national news. And there are hundreds of deaths per day in America. Are you seeing an increase in Oklahoma?
It's the fastest growing increase in overdose deaths in Oklahoma. Just in the last 3 years, it's increased almost 300%. And most of these fentanyl deaths are these pills, blue M30s, are counterfeit oxycodone. Side by side look just like oxycodone, but they're fentanyl, which is a cheaper opiate, but just as powerful, if not more powerful, than heroin or oxycodone or morphine. And so a lot of these people out on the streets are buying these pills, not realizing just how powerful fentanyl can be, and they are overdosing. We see 6 to 7 overdoses a night just at the Oklahoma City hospitals. That doesn't include the rest of our medical facilities around the state.
What I want to slip into here is at a certain point, addiction, it becomes a disease. Is that right, Lauren?
Yes, absolutely. Many would consider a disease clinically, and regardless of if you want to label it as a disease, it is absolutely something that requires treatment.
Treatment, not incarceration. Mark, what do you see? I know the OBN has a great reputation. What are you guys seeing there as far as incarceration, punitive measures versus rehabilitative measures?
Well, our agency is focusing on these large drug trafficking organizations, and we do everything we can to go after those who are literally putting 589 pounds of meth on our streets at a time. And these are economic-based crimes by drug cartels. So we work very closely with our state prosecutors and our federal prosecutors to do everything we can to put these people away for a very, very long time. But certainly there's users and low-level dealers on the streets that many of them are selling drugs simply to feed an addiction. And we very much support the drug courts and looking at second chances and trying to get some of these people cleaned up so that they're not on the streets in demand for these drugs, which is all the drug cartels are doing, is simply supplying the demand of this country because our addiction rates are so high. And we must focus on addiction as well as enforcement against the criminals.
Chad, what is one of the more talked about reasons that some of your clients are involved in the drug trade in Oklahoma?
Oh, oftentimes people are just trying to make a dollar easily. And of course, the common shtick that we defense lawyers peddle to prosecutors, and it's not just a shtick, there's oftentimes truth to it, is that these people were just dealing to support their addiction. When you get into trafficking weight, it's hard to make that sell, but that is oftentimes the case, that people are addicted and supporting their addiction by selling.
All right. And Chad, I do want to stay with you here for a minute, because as I imagine, as you're working with clients who have gotten into trouble with this, you see their progress as you work with them over the weeks and months as they move through the judicial system. How many people, percentage-wise, of the people you've handled really want to change, or they're just getting busted as the price of business?
It seems to be a function of where they are in their drug dealing career or in their addiction. People have to get to the point where they want to be rid of it. And, law enforcement's job has become a lot more difficult. One of the unintended consequences that I didn't appreciate before we had medical marijuana was how useful marijuana was for chasing down more serious crimes. Oftentimes, the smell of marijuana could get law enforcement onto a bigger case, and they could chase up the chain, little fish to big fish, and they don't have that ability anymore. Something I actually never saw coming.
So that's called probable cause, right, Mark?
Right, and Chad's absolutely right. So many of the bigger cases that have been worked, whether it's human trafficking, violent crimes, domestic violence, stolen property, are oftentimes found as a result of something like Chad mentioned, somebody calling the police because they smell something in an apartment or coming from a home or even a vehicle during a traffic stop. There might be the odor of marijuana, and it led to the discovery of a much more insidious crime and activity. We just don't see that to this level anymore because our attitudes in this country have changed so much when it comes to marijuana.
All right, Lauren, I want to come to you and talk about fentanyl that we've kind of segued into and discussing here. How many people, percentage-wise, come into your facility that have a problem with fentanyl, or I guess is in the same category as opiates?
Yes. What we're seeing actually more commonly, unfortunately, is that fentanyl is being laced with the existing drugs. So laced by dealers into methamphetamine, into opiates, which is kind of touched on a little bit previously as well, which of course is increasing the death rates as well. So even if somebody isn't necessarily coming in with specifically a fentanyl addiction, which we do see, they may have been put at risk simply because their drug of choice is now being laced with fentanyl.
Why are they being laced with it? Is it a cost-saving measure?
That's my understanding. Kind of what was talked about a little bit earlier is that it's more cost effective. It's cheaper, the high is stronger. And so it is really easy for these dealers to put it into other substances.
So I just want to ask you again, Lauren, really quickly, do you know if someone takes a drug laced with fentanyl or they're knowingly taking fentanyl, after they take it, are they going to die, or does it depend on how much is in there? And if there's too much, how long does it take before they lose their life?
So my understanding is that it's really kind of a roll of the dice. I think as far as where we stand right now, that there's actually a 1 in 4 fatality rate when somebody is using fentanyl. That's where things like Narcan come in, harm reduction, where we can treat those overdoses immediately while we get somebody to the hospital. However, we are absolutely seeing an uptick in the death tolls with fentanyl. Absolutely.
I wanted to ask both you and Chad, Lauren, what would you like to see happen with the judicial system where, these hardcore addicts are concerned? What would be the best? Maybe people are concerned with the economy. What would be the best economically, and what would be the best for the persons involved for Oklahoma to take in its next step? Lauren, we can start with you.
So the reality is that right now we are still spending more incarcerating people than we are rehabilitating them. It costs less to rehabilitate. We need to get people not just rehabilitated from these substances, but rehabilitated to where they are connected back to their communities. They're productive members of society. They're employed and they're moving forward outside of their addiction.
Chad, it sounds like she wants to put you out of business.
Sounds like, and she probably should by and large, with the exception of methamphetamine. I am very libertarian in my philosophy. If it were up to me, psychedelic mushrooms, probably cocaine, maybe even opioids would be legal. But the one that causes so much collateral harm, in my view, is methamphetamine. When people get addicted to methamphetamine, they lose all sense of decency or morality. They steal like crazy. And I think we made a big mistake making that a misdemeanor, or at least not having some way that can be increased to a felony after a second or third time, because for every time that we catch someone with methamphetamine, they've probably broken into a half dozen houses.
All right, Mark, I want to come to you and discuss something that's coming up for voters in Oklahoma, or that may be coming up, is the switch to recreational use marijuana, not just medical use marijuana. Does that have another impact on the drug scene in Oklahoma?
Well, we can learn a lot from other states that have already gone down this path. We've seen so much crime and other issues, black markets thriving in states like California, where they legalized marijuana for the recreational market. And you've got people who are going to take advantage of that, and they try to hide their criminal behavior behind what seems like a legitimate legalized product, but behind the scenes, you've got drug organizations from Mexico, from China, from Russia moving in. We've got it here in Oklahoma with medical. They've got it in places like Colorado and California with they're both medical and recreational. So you do invite a lot of criminal elements, and these same crime organizations are involved in human trafficking. They're involved in prostitution and gambling rings that we've uncovered already here in Oklahoma in just the last 2 years. And talking with our partners in California and Colorado, it is much worse. And so we're very concerned about the door that opens up for other types of crime.
And the Oklahoma News Report, Mark, has reported about people coming, buying up land who don't even live in America. They're out of state, they're out of country, to open up grows or illegal grows in Oklahoma. Is that something you're seeing as well still?
Yes, we've shut down close to 200 farms in Oklahoma that are tied directly to criminal organizations out of Mexico and China. And we have many more investigations underway where they come here, they use a fraudulent business structure to obtain an Oklahoma license. Some local persons paid a small amount to claim that they're the local owner. Meanwhile, the rest of the organization comes in and actually runs the business. And the 100% of the product coming off of these criminal farms is going to the East Coast or West Coast black market. We haven't traced a single plant and product that was sold legally in Oklahoma coming from these farms that we're investigating.
All right. I would like to thank all three of you for joining us for this important discussion. I knew we would not get through all of the questions I have, but that is our time. Thank you again, and I hope to have you back soon to talk more.
Susan, thank you very much.
Thank you.